Talking sports with Rick Hasty on Fridays, and we're going to get to that momentarily. But there's some things that are also competitive. Oh, that's a good way of leading in. When it comes to health care and Medicare and things like that. And the gal who is in the know as our go-to person is Becky Jennings. Good morning to you, Becky.
Good morning. How are you?
How's that for lead-in?
That's great. I love
it.
it.
Because I know how much you love sports.
Yeah. Well, the health care coverage is very competitive, so there's a lot of competition going on.
Boy, you talk about dog eat dog. That's it, isn't it?
It is, yes. There's a lot of things happening this year in particular.
And you know, we have you on regularly just because there's so many changes that it's not just the enrollment period that happens toward the end of the year, but it's all during the year, isn't it?
You know, we're very busy all year. You know, a lot of people don't realize that plans for what's going to be implemented the following year are generally submitted in June. So all the Medicare plans they've got with their prescription drug coverage and the Medicare Advantage plans, that's all submitted the first Monday of June to Medicare. And so they send it off to Medicare. Medicare says yay or nay. They send it back to the carrier reworks it. So it's a process, and it doesn't just happen, quickly.
You know, people think, well, this is, Congress and they pass laws and everything, but this really doesn't go through Congress at all. This is just a private entity working with another private entity, but Medicare is a government agency.
Medicare is a government agency, and it's overseen. Medicare is actually the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, also known as CMS. And so what happens is laws get passed by our legislators, and then CMS has to regulate the laws. Okay, so they might say you can or cannot do this, and then Medicare has to determine how to make that happen.
So they'll say they regulated a law in 2022, okay?
Yep.
And they passed that law, and now CMS takes control of that. So every year along the way, CMS really has the autonomy, is that a good way of putting it, to work with the insurance agencies and things like that to actually work within the framework of the law? Is that a good way of putting it?
Sort of. They actually, what they do is CMS interprets the law. Okay, and then they regulate how the carriers, the insurance companies, have to implement the law.
So there's no oversight from Congress. Once it's passed and it's gone, Congress doesn't do any oversight on that.
I wouldn't say no oversight, because there are still committees that are keeping an eye on things and so forth. But there are certain things that they absolutely have to make happen within the framework of the law itself.
Okay.
And so what happened, so every year we hear, you need to make sure that you're checking your health plan.
Yeah.
And this year in particular, there was some regulation or some laws passed, and now the regulations are coming out, and it is going to be significant changes. Ooh. Now, ultimately, do I think people are going to be changing their health plans? I have no idea, because really across the board there's changes. So whether or not that'll actually result in people making changes, I don't know. But I think that people who want to have an informed decision, this is the year that you really need to be paying attention. In fact,
so what would be one of the big changes coming in?
Well, let's start with something not Medicare. Let's start with short-term health plans. Short-term health plans have been around for a long, long time, and they're limited plans. And what they were originally designed for was to make sure that people could get coverage in between employer plans. You know, you've got let's say you end a job and you don't necessarily want to take COBRA, so you might take a short-term plan until your new plan with the new employer kicks in. Well, what was happening was when the Obamacare or the ACA passed, we started seeing health insurance plans continue to increase in premium. These plans, because of their limitations, as long as you can say no to all the health questions and you don't really have any health conditions that alert the plan, you can sign up for one of these plans. The limitation is it's going to cap at how much it's going to cover. So it may only cover $1 million in claims or $3 million in claims, depending on the plan. So it's limited on how much it covers. It also doesn't fall in line with the ACA guidelines. For example, it doesn't typically have to cover maternity or preventive. So there's a lot of things it doesn't have to cover, but some people who are healthy and young and don't qualify for a tax credit on the marketplace, things like that, they'll choose this. So what happened when they passed the ACA, they said these plans can only last 3 months increments at a time. And so a lot of people were signing up for them at that time that were very healthy. They knew that they could continue to say no every 3 months. The caution is you don't know if you can say no to all the health questions every 3 months, and you could end up having to say yes and not be able to get the plan back. Why does that matter? Because it doesn't give you a special enrollment period to get on the marketplace, and then you're uninsured for a period of time.
Okay, which leads me to the question of rollover, because some of your plans, when you sign up, it'll automatically roll over and, you're in there.
Yeah.
But what you're just talking about is that if this is quarterly or 3 months, it'll just stop and you don't have a rollover.
You have to reapply for a different plan. And the thing is these are not qualified health plans. Okay, these are limited plans, so they don't follow the same rules. Why does this matter? Because And so what happened was when the Trump administration came in office, they reworked a few things on some of this, and they allowed plans to go longer than 3 months. In fact,
is that a good thing or bad?
Well, for people who were on it was a good thing because they were then allowed to go for 3 years, short minus 1 day. They were allowed to go 3 years on this short-term plan. Now, you can jump off anytime you want to. So if you get into it and a couple years later you're having a health condition, you could get on an ACA qualified health plan if you wanted to during annual enrollment or open enrollment period. So my point is that what's happening now is they've taken it back down to that 3 months. And so people who are on those today, they can stay on it till it runs out. But starting September 1st, anyone who applies for one of those plans, it will only go for the 3-month period. And you can't re-sign up with the same insurance company. So you have to sign it up with a different insurance company after that 3-month window.
So you're playing hopscotch here? So in other words, September to the end of November, I got my 3 months. I cannot renew with the same person. Now I have to find another one. Now, after that next 3 months, can you go back to the first one because that one was better?
You can't repeat within the year, I believe is what it says. And
well, that's kind of sucko, isn't it?
The reason some people will do this is because let's say March rolls around or July rolls around and somebody goes, I'm just feeling like I just need some health insurance. I just am not comfortable. So you can apply for these plans anytime. The key is, can you get approved for it? Because you have to be able to answer no to all the health questions. So it gives you enrollment periods outside of open enrollment to get some kind of health insurance, but it is limited. So those are things that you need to know about. So that's one of the things that that Medicare has regulated for this coming year that was recently passed.
All right. We have 6.5 months before the end of the year, and the enrollment period begins November, December, that little window there. What do people need to know now in preparation for that?
Well, if you're on an individual health plan, not Medicare, you just need to be prepared. So if you say, hey, I think that we need to get on a health insurance plan this year. We haven't had coverage for 2 or 3 years, and we're just feel like we're continuing to roll the dice, so we don't want to anymore. You can apply for those plans anytime that you want to, but during the annual and during open enrollment, which for the marketplace for individual health plans that are not short term, that is in the fall, November and December, November 1st to December 15th. A lot of times they extend that enrollment period, but that's the official dates. And so they have to take you. If you're going on to a marketplace plan, it doesn't matter what your health condition is or whatever, they have to take you.
So that 45 days is your time.
Yeah, and you can take a look at it and see if you qualify for a tax credit to help offset those monthly premiums and things like that. But what matters is how old you are. That determines your rate. Your health condition makes no difference anymore. And your income what you report to the federal government and the state government as far as your taxes go. That is how they determine what your tax credit is. So to help offset those monthly premiums. So if you're going to apply for a plan in November that starts January 1st of 2025, you have to report what you believe your income for 2025 will be, and that's how they determine those tax credits.
Wow. So it's almost like, tell us what you make and we'll bill you accordingly.
Right. It is kind of like that because according to the law.
And the more you make, the more we're going to bill you.
Right. And the older you are, the more it costs you. So, but here's the thing. According to the law, it can only be a certain percentage of your household income. So that's how they figure out what the tax credits are. So
single, married, or if you have kids or whatever, they all base that in there.
Yes. And for a long time, there was a thing called the family glitch. So one of the questions is if
people walk home and they go, I got the family glitch.
Yeah, and it's not a good thing.
No, it's not.
Because an employer, if you have coverage through your employer, the employer only has to pay up to 50% of the employee's premium. And if you were offered coverage on the employer plan, you couldn't go to the marketplace and get a tax credit. Well, the employee still can't, but now his family can if his family glitch allows him. If the employer plan is costing them more than the allowed amount, they can go to the marketplace now and get a tax credit for the rest of the family, not the employee.
Why does it have to be so complicated?
Well,
for you, you understand it, but for the normal person, they're going,
No, there's always changes and there's always, things that you have to know.
Is it because there's so much money in this business?
Well, it's because when they passed the law, it was like 2,200 pages of the law and regulations. That's like the Bible. Okay, it's
5.5 reams.
Yes, it's huge, and so there are just many, many things that continue to keep it complicated. We try to narrow it down to how does it really affect the consumer, and how can we make the consumer be able to understand it just for them. You don't have to, as a consumer, understand 2,200 pages, right? You just need to understand what happens if I don't report my income correctly. What's the consequence of that? What if I don't have coverage and I just choose not to do it? What's the consequence of that? It used to be if you didn't have qualified health insurance or a Christian health share, then you were given a penalty. The first year, the penalty was $95, and it just went up every year after that. When the Trump administration,
that's a question on your tax reform. It's like, do you have health care?
Right.
If you say no, man, they whacked you.
Well, what happened was the Trump administration, they didn't get rid of the penalty, but they took the penalty to zero. So essentially, it got rid of the penalty, but technically, it did not, and they could bring that penalty back any time that they want to. So if they decided
that's kind of tricky. We're going to keep it on the books, but we're not going to charge you anything because we want to charge you later. Hey, guess what? It's still in the book, so now it's going to be $100.
Well, it would have been very difficult to change the law, so it was a lot easier to change a regulation rather than the law itself. Okay, and so that's why they did it that way. So
much stuff to talk. By the way, a ream is 500 pages, so that was 4.5 reams, not 5.5 reams. I've corrected myself.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. Becky, there's and you're with Becky Jennings Insurance. I can say that. Do people get upset with this stuff?
They're upset a lot less than they used to be. I will tell you, when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, when it was passed in 2010, it was implemented in 2014. I didn't touch it in my agency the first year. I waited until the next year to start helping people with it because there was too many unanswered questions. And that second year, that's when people were very upset because they got a lot of wrong information the first year. They misreported their income, and they were having all kinds of issues. That year, people were very upset. And I never take it personally because it's not me personally doing anything. And people, they're angry, but they're never angry at me personally, typically. I don't think they are anyway.
No, they're probably just angry at the law.
They want to talk to somebody about it. And I'm a consumer too, right? So I personally have gone through all the gymnastics of making sure that I have health insurance and the right plan, and do I qualify for a tax credit or don't I? And if I do I even want to apply for it, or would I rather not? So there's a lot of things that go on with people with regard to that. What I will tell you is this year I would be paying attention, because what's happening with the Inflation Reduction Act that passed in 2022 is going to affect specifically this year every Medicare consumer. If you are a Medicare beneficiary, you better have an agent that can talk to you about all the changes that are happening this year. Now, like I said at the beginning, will people change their plan because of those changes? I don't know, because all these plans, they're making adjustments this year. So some plans will see a lot less in dental. Some plans might have a premium that have never had a premium before. They may have a more narrow formulary where they don't cover as many drugs. These are all in conjunction with now that law has passed. Now they are regulating the law, and now it's beginning to affect consumers for 2025 in a big way for some people. Some's good and some is not good.
Well, we've got to run. There's so much more to talk about, isn't there?
There is.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Well, thanks for coming in. We're going to have you in again, because this is an ongoing, this is like Tolstoy's War and Peace.
It is, and it's going on and on and on. I've got so much information.
Thanks so much.
You bet. Thank you.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starr, and stand